When it comes to Kickstarter or GameFound campaigns that involve a mass amount of quality STLs, something that comes up fairly frequently is a minor complaint. The minor complaint being that if you don't have a 3D printer, you can't get hold of those STLs and treat yourselves to those lovely, lovely models. Luckily, this time round with Revenants Run, that is not an issue. Funnily enough, this video is sponsored by the Revenants Run GameFound campaign. Revenants Run is a one-page rules-compatible series of miniatures, not just available in STL form for you to download and print at home, but also as a range of physical models as well. So, those of you who do not have a 3D printer taking up a massive amount of space in your garage, I say that only because that's what my 3D printer is currently doing, you can get hold of these models without having to do all of that. Instead, they have a full production run of this stuff that you'll be able to get and have shipped directly to your door. I mean, presuming you want them shipped to your door and not to somewhere else. It'd be weird if you did, but who am I to judge? So, I have to admit, this is a nice change. I really like this because, as I said in the intro, one of the complaints that comes up fairly often when we cover like STL campaigns is that not everyone has access to a 3D printer. They are very, very reasonable now. When it comes to just the cost of getting into 3D printing, it is incredibly cheap compared to even just a few years ago, and the overall quality of the equipment that you can get when you do get into it, I mean, it's just ridiculous how quickly that technology is progressing year on year on year. That being said, not everyone's got the space, and not everyone wants to deal with the more interesting elements of resin 3D printing, which, funnily enough, I'm currently dealing with. So, I do have, in front of me, well, down there, I do have some of the production models for Revenants Run, which I have done a cheeky little paint job on. But I don't currently have 3D printed miniatures to compare them to from the same range. That's mostly because I need to clean my Saturn II because I need to install a new FEP. Now, if you're not familiar, the FEP is the transparent bit that goes on the bottom of the tank that contains all the resin. And I can tell you from bitter experience, having had 3 break now, that if that breaks, it's bad times. Luckily, because these are also produced and shipped out to you by iDemo Games, who are handling the production for this campaign. I mean, the way to avoid that is to just not print them yourself and just get the physical miniatures, which I think you'll agree, taking a look at, look pretty damn good. My initial impression when receiving these and opening the box, taking them out, having a good glance and a good turnover, is that they are really, really good quality. There is nary a hint of layer line on these guys, and that is so nice to see. You can easily tell that every detail is incredibly crisp and sharp. Every curve is, well, an actual proper curve. There's very little in the way of like stepped gradients going up. They are really, really nicely produced. Things like the cloaks look fantastic, but what looks even more fantastic than just the cloth are things like the patterning on the spectral guard, the lighter armoured figures with the double-ended spears and those really nice hexagonal cloaks. I absolutely loved painting those because, well, look at them. They look fantastic. Now, come the next video, because there's going to be a couple of these, we are going to be comparing the ones that I've printed at home with the ones that have been sent to me. But before that, I think it's genuinely worth comparing them to production plastic miniatures. See, I think there's still a little bit of wariness when it comes to resin printing. When it comes to receiving 3D printed models as a production miniature, I still see a little bit of reservation here and there. The fact is that the machines being used to produce things like these models are not the same as the consumer grade ones that are in my garage, for instance. The level of detail, the level of quality on these is exceptionally good and holds up absolutely fine next to, say, one of the biggest miniature wargame companies in the world. I mean, I've compared them here with stuff from GW, with stuff from Archon Studios. Both of them, I think, have got fantastic miniature quality. Both companies are extremely, extremely good at what they do. And the Spectral Guard and the New Mysterian Defenders, the lads with the flamers, they stand up to that comparison. they look fantastic next to those models. I think for a lot of people there's this assumption in a lack of quality when it comes to 3D printed stuff, and that is not the case with these miniatures. They look absolutely fantastic. Now I think it is worth pointing out that at this point I've printed quite a lot of miniatures myself, and I've been really happy with the quality that I've been able to achieve with what I have at home. But these are a step above most of the things that I've printed. These just have an extra layer of crisp detail that, whilst the rest of the stuff I printed hasn't been lacking in detail, it's not been quite as fine and perfectly formed as this. Now, it is worth pointing out that there is a bit of cleanup that I had to do on a couple of these. So when it came to them being shipped, the double-ended spears on the Spectral Guard, they took a bit of heating and then bending back into shape. I think it was just whilst they were being shipped and they were wrapped in bubble wrap, that meant that they kind of bent in certain places, so that had to be sorted. There are a few little supports left on the New Mysterian Defenders, only on a couple of them. I think I got all of them, but I have a nasty suspicion I left one on one of the guns because I didn't notice it until I was doing the photography for it. For the most part, very little in the way of cleanup and tidying needed. They arrived having been already cleaned and having already had the supports removed, and for the most part the supports have been removed in such a way that you don't have any sort of indication that they were already there, which, by the way, as someone who prints miniatures at home fairly frequently, that's the bit I hate the most. That's the bit I hate about the cleanup. It's not necessarily the fact that you've got to get all the PPE on, you've got to have the goggles and the gloves and make sure you've got something over everything and make sure your arms and hands are covered, and etc, etc. That's frustrating and boring, but it's the removing of the supports, because quite often I'll rush it. I'm not going to lie to you, I'll just say it, I rush it. I want the thing done and I want to be able to paint it and use it and do the thing with it, and I will get a little bit too enthusiastic and I'll leave little pock marks sometimes, or little raised edges where the supports were, and there's not a hint of that on these miniatures that I was sent, so that to me indicates that there is some excellent cleaning up going on because, well, I didn't have to do it. So now, before we get on to the painting side of things, as I've said before, this is Revenants Run. It is a GameFound campaign run by iDemo Games and Art of the Genre. All the sculpts are done by Lazy Squire Games, which you'll have already had experience of before. They also did Ravage Star and the Legend of Keepers stuff that we have also featured on the channel, and this is a huge drop of miniatures. There is so much stuff to choose from light to heavy infantry, vehicles, you have a mix of biological and robot warriors. There is a huge amount going on, and if you play with one-page rules, these are a must-have. Of course, if you don't, there are plenty of things in here that will serve as extremely capable proxies for your favourite tabletop war game. Can't imagine what that might be, but a swift look through the GameFound campaign page will probably give you plenty of ideas as to entire armies you could come up with, whether or not one-page rules is your go-to system or not. Thank you once again to Revenants Run for sponsoring the video, and now let's talk about the paint job. Now, when it came to painting these up, to be honest, I wanted to try and do something really grimy and filthy because, frankly, the amount of ornamentation and stuff on the armour, I felt like it would take to that kind of style pretty well, and that's exactly what I went for, and I had something of adventure doing this because it turns out that one of my airbrushes was not having it, wasn't happy. I think a split nozzle is the cause, and as such it needs to be repaired because when it was first unleashed on one of these lads, oh dear lord, the amount of spray, the amount of spotty nonsense that went on was absolutely devastating. Luckily, we salvaged it, but I followed the same basic pattern for every single one of these models where I sprayed them with a kind of off-white, creamy coloured mix of skin tone and white, both from Vallejo Air Colour, and then once that was done, it was a case of hitting a few of the metallic areas, making sure that some of the details stood out, and also doing the classic thing that one always has to do when it comes to painting grimdark, which is covering everything in streaking grime and then getting rid of it afterwards. I did put a little bit of battle scarring on the model first. I used the old sponge and metallic paint technique, just dabbed it around there to make it look like the paint had worn away in different sections, which I did like the look of. One day I will go back to attempting chipping medium, but this was not that day because, frankly, the last experience I had with it, I'm convinced that I did something terribly wrong because it should not have come out the way it did. But with these, I just stuck to the old method. The old, simple sponge and metallics, because, let's be honest, it works super well for what it is. Now, it's time for a confession, alright? It's time for me to be totally honest, because a lot of the preparation for the armour and the clothing for these models it was done in a way that was designed to be fast. Designed to be done in such a way where if you had a big batch of them, You could spray them, you could do your streak and grime, you could hit the spots that need to be hit with metallic colours, and then you could spend most of your time and attention on painting the cloaks. Look, it's not my fault, alright? I love me some cloaks. I love painting cloaks. I don't know what it is about cloaks, but I love painting cloaks. And these have got some great cloaks, so naturally I put a fair amount of effort into painting the cloaks over the armour because I just want to look at them from the back. That was a weird sentence. Look, I can't help it, right? I saw the hexagonal cloaks on the Spectral Guard and I had to do it. I had to go for a nice greeny shifting kind of colour scheme for them because they look so good and I thought it would work, and I spent more time on the cloaks than I think I spent on some of the other parts of the models, and by some of them I mean almost all of them. But to be fair to me, I love how it turned out. I thought it worked really well. It looked really nice. It's a really nice colour. The cloaks took the colour really nicely. I just love painting a good cloak. I just love it. Now, in terms of finished products, I'm fairly happy with them, but to be honest, as I was painting them, I did think to myself, I've been a fool. I've been a fool here, because what I actually should have done is done, like, metal armour. Like, done metal armour for the new Mysterian guys, because frankly, the raised sections all over those models would make it perfect for the armour recipe I normally use, which is basically just take four different layers of increasingly lighter metallic paint and just dry brush in smaller quantities each time. It's how I do all armour now. And you know what, I think it would look fantastic on these. And I kind of regret not having done that, but you know what, we've got another video to come on this stuff, so it may well be that the next batch you see is painted totally differently to this batch. Except for the cloaks, obviously they're perfect and need no change. I will say, they're fun models to paint. They are fun models to paint. There's a nice amount of detail, there's a nice amount of like raised areas if dry brushing is your preferred method. And I did enjoy making them super, super grimy. Sometimes you just gotta go grimdark with it, you know? So there you go. Those are the physical miniatures that are available from the Revenants Run GameFound campaign, which there will be a link for in the description down below. Come the next video, we will be looking at some of the home-printed offerings done by yours truly, by the machine on the other side of that wall, and hopefully all will go well. Wish me luck. Seriously, having received the physical ones and taking a look at those and looking at the mess that awaits me in there, I honestly, I'd probably just buy the physical ones. Look, I'm just saying. Maybe I'm poisoned. Maybe I'm poisoned against the thing I like doing, but so much easier just getting them in a box, you know? Anyway, do check out the GameFound campaign. It is in the description. There's also a link in the pinned comment. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing what you make of these and seeing how many of you are happy about the fact that you can just get them. You don't have to print them, you can just get them. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things. YouTube members, patrons, there's some hefty stuff coming for you this week, so look out for that. I will see you for the next one.